which is in Winter Garden, Florida, about 10 miles west of Orlando. This is my 32nd year in ESE in the state of Florida. And 2 years ago, somebody here had some vision. That would be our director, Crystal Davidson. And Crystal wanted to have a program that was dedicated for the students with disabilities and their ability to be able to get some sort of a certification to allow them to be able to get good paying jobs. So that's what we do here. So as we go through the slides, I'll talk a little bit more about that. We call the program Build Your Future, and the program is set up through FCSUA, and you probably, if you've been following this seminar throughout the week, you probably have seen Dr. Janice Seabrooks Blackmore. And Dr. Janice is the one that makes sure that all of this stuff works exceptionally well. So the who of our program is, this is a new program for students with disabilities, specifically designed for those with intellectual disability, defined as IQ of 70 or less. So other disabilities are welcome, but the intellectual disability must be present due to the grant we're using. This is a federal grant. It comes to FCSUA, a UCF. They distribute the grant, but we have to have documentation of that intellectual disability. Right now, federal government defining it as IQ under 70. So all of the students that have come to my program have fit that criteria, and we need to have a psych evaluation or some sort of school records that are relatively recent to show that they have that particular IQ level. The present time, I've also got two that are listed as ASD as well. So we'll welcome anybody, but they definitely have to have that intellectual disability designation. So another who slide, and this talks about a few things I just said. If the student has a different disability, a reevaluation may be in order to see if they qualify. We have told parents that we're interested in this. Look, you may want to have them reevaluated. If they're evaluated and they meet our criteria, IQ under 70, then we will take them. We're happy to take them. So we need to have that documentation though. So we let parents know, caregivers, whoever it is, that just because they're not sure doesn't mean they can't come here. It means they just need to take a step and do that. One of the other things is that the students need to be done with the K-12 system, okay? So there's no deferred diploma kinds of things going on here. They have to be done with the K-12 system because this is college level, and when they come here, that all has to be in their past. So all of the students that have come so far, and we've had 4 go through the program so far, well, 1 go through, I've got 3 right now that will finish successfully in about 5 weeks. All of them have chosen welding thus far. So anyway, so let's move on. The what, okay, I said we got the who, what, and why. The what. Students have to fill out an application packet, and they need to submit it to me in person, or they can submit it electronically. Their packet must be complete. Those are the kinds of things that any of you are interested about that. I will be happy to email those to you. My contact information is here on the site, but it's also at the end of this presentation. So I'm happy to give you anything I've got just so you can see what we've got going on. So we contact the student and the caregiver, and we arrange for an interview with both of them. And I might add that we arrange for that interview to be separate for each one. And we'll talk more about that in a future slide. But what we want to make sure is that the student really wants to come here to work, and it's not necessarily just being coached, cajoled, manipulated by the parent to get out of the house. Because this is college level, because of it being college level, the expectation is that they are going to work and that they're going to be successful. We're here to do everything we can to make them successful, help them be successful in a wide variety of fashions. But if they're not really ready to go to college, then we need to know that. Maybe they need to spend another year somewhere else. those are the kinds of discussions that I sometimes have to have with parents or caregivers. All right, so why students are interviewed separately from caregivers? Because of the things I just said. Determinations are made to caregiver level of involvement, student interest, and most importantly, the student's desire to be employed. Most people don't know this, or maybe some of you do, but at CTE level, which is where we are, the whole expectation is that they not only acquire a credential, but the whole expectation is that they use that credential to become employed. Can we make them go to work? Absolutely not. We're not in the job placement business, but what happens is all of our industry teachers know the employers in the area that are willing to hire our students. So because of that, we have kind of an inside line for our students to get jobs. So in the welding field, the welding instructor, Mr. Prasad, knows everybody, every welding shop, every steel plant, everybody that's in the area that has something to do with metal or welding. And so when we have a student who has completed, we know the idiosyncrasy, so to speak, of the student. We know the things that would not necessarily be great for them, but we can find a job that will fit their abilities, their skills, their talents almost to a T because of his vast knowledge of the employers in the area. So they have to have that desire to be employed. In fact, that's one of the things that we have to establish very quickly, because his success is determined in part by how many of his students become employed. Right now, that's set at 70%. Administration expects that 70% of his students would become employed. You may say his students, well, they're my students, but because they chose the welding curriculum, it goes through him. So of those 4, right now we know that 50% of them have jobs, but we're hoping for more. So that's what we're looking at. Next slide. Pardon me. Successful interviews will lead to basic academic and physical skills testing. In welding type situations or in metal type situations, fabrication and whatnot, they have to be able to lift 50 pounds. They need to be able to load and unload trucks. They need to be able to handle a large piece of metal that needs to be cut to a smaller size. That's where the physical skills testing part comes in. The basic academic testing has to do with math because there's a lot of measuring involved with welding. So welding and steel work, measuring is a big deal. It's always a challenge for my students with a measuring tape because I haven't had one yet that's ever really used measuring tape. And so that's a challenge, but we have multiple avenues to be able to test that. To be able to give them those concepts. And so we do our best to help them be successful in those areas. The safety with tools and power equipment is a huge part of this curriculum. And so when the students are coming down here for the first time at the beginning of the year, there's a 3-day safety orientation in this classroom that I'm sitting in right now, the welding classroom. And so for 3 days, it's nothing but videos, safety quizzes, all kinds of different things that will help them not only be safe for us, but be safe on the job. And I'd be a liar if I told you that we don't have to review that with them from time to time. They're young folks. Sometimes they think they're invincible. I'm not going down that road. You get where I'm going. So what we've got to do is make sure that we review safety regularly for them. So primary goals, employment, strong expectation that students will become employed upon completion. We have local businesses that are willing to hire our students with disabilities. If the job is offered as expected, they will take it. And I alluded to that earlier in another slide. So I can't, I guess you might say, reiterate that enough. The whole idea at CTE is that people acquire skills, they acquire knowledge, they acquire talents, they acquire a credential that will allow them to have decent entry-level employment. The jobs that my guys will start on will start at least $10 an hour, probably 12. the students that get multiple welding certifications, and we have adult students as well as dual enrollment high school students that have multiple welding certifications, they may start out at $15 to $17 an hour. So these are not chump change jobs. These are good paying jobs, and we want our students to be successful. That's just a basic tenet of CTE. So another what slide. This is a one-year program. They will receive a credential upon successful completion. There's a certain number of hours that they have to complete. It's a 1,200-hour class between the welding part of it and then, of course, the part I do with specialized career instruction. And just so you know, that specialized career instruction part of it is a lot of things that they received in high school, but it's elevated another 2 or 3 steps: interview skills, resume writing skills, all those types of things are a huge part of it, as well as getting along with your coworker, workplace behaviors, those types of things. So when you look at that, it's things they've seen before, but the reason that we offer that as part of this is because so many, pardon me again, so many of our students have been at home for several years. They're 25, 26, 27 years old. And so that's an excellent review for them. The ones that graduated from high school and came straight here, they may have seen it as recently as the previous year, but it's still stuff they all need to know and get. So the who. This is a full-day adult program. The adult students provide their own transportation. My students do too. There's a requirement, whether it's a family member or it's public transportation. We have a large bus stop for the public transportation system in Orange County right out in front of the school. And on any given day, 15, 20 students get off of there every time that bus stops there. So, and in the afternoon, sometimes they have to wait for a second bus because so many of them get on the bus to go back home. So they can ride public transportation or they can be brought in by a family member. We haven't had any in my program yet that are drivers, but the adult students, as well as the dual enrollment high school students, are allowed to drive here if they do that. So they spend part of their day in my classroom, the specialized career education classroom, and part of their day in their choice of welding or electricity. So let me talk about electricity just for a minute. You may say, why those two programs, welding and electricity? Well, Mr. Prasad, the welding instructor, also is ESE endorsed. Okay, he has no problem with ESE students being in his classroom. Okay, can we load it up? No, because there's dual enrollment students there and there's also adult students there. But if there's 3 or 4, that's not an unbearable load. Plus, I'm down here all the time whenever my students are here. So that works pretty well. The electricity teacher, she is the same way. She doesn't have ESE endorsement, but she's more than open to having ESE students in her classroom. Both of them, before I came on in this position, had sought my guidance on several students in the past that they had, and they said, hey, can you come down and observe for a few minutes? It's just the old ESE person in me. I give them a quick observation. I say, you might want to try this or you might want to try that. It's just so that we can have them as successful as possible. So I was here 5 years before I took this position. Actually worked for Transition Services in a landscape program that was located out on the other end of campus. So when I came to take this, it was sort of just an, I guess, a lateral slide over to come to West Side. So electricity is very similar in a lot of ways. 80, 90% of their work day is in the shop. It's real neat to have videos up on the walls, the whiteboard, all this stuff, Canvas, and you go to this. It's great to have all that, but the reality of it is they've got to get their hands dirty. They've got to get their hands on it, and they've got to actually be able to do it. And in both of these programs, for them to get a certificate, they've got to demonstrate those skills. So let's move on. Here's the what. And the reason that I wanted you to see this is because these are actual course codes for state of Florida, okay? The one that I'm listed under is specialized career education. As I said earlier, it's employability skills training, workplace social skills training, job seeking, goal setting, all of those things, reinforcement of skills that may not, they may require additional time not available in welding or electricity. I'll give you a quick example. 3 weeks ago, we were telling my students it's going to be time very, very soon before the end of the year for you to do some welding test plates. What happens is they weld these plates together in a specific order with a specific kind of welding rod, and then the plates are sent to a welding lab who does destructive testing on them. So they put them in a machine. If they can't break them, that's a good weld, the student passes. Well, they need to know all the details of that. There's a complete PowerPoint for that, and it's got 20 slides in it on preparing your plates and getting you ready for that. So that's the kinds of things that I can do in my classroom to help reinforce what's going on down here in welding. So that was just a quick example. It happens all the time. It's a variety of things. Oftentimes it's safety. So what? 2 vocational tracks, electrician helper and welder assistant. When you go to those course codes and you look them up, and this is my not being totally prepared here, I should have actually put those in as a PowerPoint slide so you can see them. But the first part of both of those courses, if a student completes that, then they have that designation, that credential as an electrician helper or as a welder assistant. Those are quote unquote semester for our adult students, okay? For my guys, they're the entire year, all right? So when they leave here, they'll have a certificate, a credential as an electrician helper or a welder assistant. That's what we give them. If they're going to progress in welding, that will be done at employer level. So they'll get a job in a welding shop. If they want to teach them increased welding skills, they'll do that in the employment situation. If we have a student who wants to continue here, they are more than welcome to continue here in the adult program, but they won't have their FCSUA scholarship that they had their first year. So they'll have to pay for it. And really, do they have to pay for it? Probably not. Pell Grants, VR, there's 100 different ways for them to have that paid for. But the whole bottom line on it is, if they show promise here and somebody wants to stay, they're more than welcome to stay and finish out the entire welding or the entire electricity curriculum. So that's just kind of their next possible step in education. But the reality is they will have enough to get employed at an entry level in welding or as an electrician's helper. All right. So here's electrician helper. There's a picture off the internet. Typical tasks include dragging wire, trenching, cleaning up work sites, keeping the van supplied, bending tubing. Now, when you think about that, you say, okay, well, that doesn't have a whole lot to do with replacing a light switch or installing a ceiling fan. Well, all those things are covered over in the electricity classroom, all right? All the basic household electricity tasks are covered in that classroom. So they'll get those skills, but typically as an electrician's helper, they would be hired to do these tasks that are listed on this slide, okay? So trenching is a huge one because many subdivisions now in residential work have all the electricity underground. There's not a lot of that wire coming from the pole out by the street. They don't do that so much anymore. And so a lot of times that trenching has to be done by hand. If it's a big area, the electrical contractor will bring in some sort of a tractor, some sort of a backhoe. But typically in residential settings, they will just dig that trench by hand. So the electrician's helper is the guy that gets to dig. And there's specifications for that. So we'll move on to the next slide. Welder assistant. So here's a guy doing basic stick welding in this picture. And if they get that certificate, it's basic stick welding, shop cleanup, measuring and cutting raw materials, loading and unloading of vehicles, grinding or drilling materials. The things you've got to do are to follow safety guidelines. You've got to keep your workplace and the other guy's workplace in safe working order. You got to perform as a member of a team. You got to use measuring tools and accurately perform the operations required. Now, in certain shops, there are certain processes that are done that are different than we might have done here. The employers know that. They realize that they may not have gotten that particular skill here because of the nature of our curriculum, but they're more than willing to teach that to them. One of the things that my guys really don't like to do a lot, but that has to happen, is that loading and unloading of trucks. You know, they show up here with several tons of steel on them, and it's got to be unloaded one piece at a time. The pieces are 24 feet long. You got one guy on one end of the piece and one guy on the other, and the piece might weigh 80 pounds, but they've got to unload it. They've got to put it in our storage racks, and then, you know, we go from there. So those are the kinds of things that they would do in either curriculum. So we'll move on here. So you'll see one of my former students here. He's using a hand grinder. Notice that he has his safety goggles on his eyes. You'll notice that he's wearing a welding jacket. You'll notice that he's wearing gloves. You'll notice that he doesn't have the grinder up in his face. He's following all the appropriate safety precautions. All right, so he's got safety down really pretty well with the grinder. And so those are the benchmarks that would be listed in that first part of welder assistant. Okay, those are all safety benchmarks. So when you look at that, PMT 0070 and PMT 0071, those are the course codes where those things happen to be listed. So if we go to the next slide, you can see what those were. Knowledge of machinery and equipment safety functions. He had to have that to be able to operate that grinder. He had to be able to select and use personal protective equipment. He had to demonstrate knowledge and use of current manufacturing processes in the welding industry. That's what he's doing. He's grinding a piece of metal to fit a need. All right. So PMT 0071 performed safety inspections of equipment and accessories. He had to inspect that grinder, make sure that it had an appropriate wheel on it. And then the last thing, he had to perform a metal removal operation. So all of those things are documented in that one picture. And so we do use a little bit of pictorial documentation. All the students leave here with a pen drive with a great resume on it and the pictures of them learning to do what it is they want to do. So hopefully when they go for an interview, they can say, by the way, I do have a pen drive here. I'd like to show you what I can do. And the reason that I like to do that is because I feel like it gives them a little step up on just having a nice resume. You know, it's not real hard to have a nice resume, but if you got a few pictures, maybe that will help them. So that's why we kind of do it that way. This next picture, you'll see that this same student is now working with one of the other welding instructors, and the ones that are here are knowledge of machine and equipment safety functions, knowledge of safety required for automated machines, and make pad welds. He's doing a pad weld on those two items that are sitting there on the table in front of you, and he's using a MIG gun to do it. The other instructor who is there next to him is just giving him a little hand over hand in the beginning. After he gets, I don't know, 15 minutes or so of that instruction, we would turn him loose to have him do some things on his own in practice. So that's just kind of what it looks like. So we'll move on down here to another slide. So here's another what of my program. At the present time, scholarships are available along with appropriate safety apparel. No one knows how long this will last, ... Here's the thing. The people at FCSUA have been absolute gems in helping us get this thing going. One of our staff members wrote the grant a couple of years ago, and within 3 months, we knew we were going to get the grant so we could get this program up and running. Drew Andrews is one of them. Dr. Janice Seabrooks Blackmore is another one. There's probably several of them that have been in this 3-day long seminar, But the point I'm trying to make is that if you're out there, you're watching this because you might be interested in doing this, these people are marvelous people to work with. I can't say enough good stuff about them. They are excellent. Phone call, email away, responses within a few minutes usually. It's not ever an issue. They have a bunch of great people working for them. And I'm just fortunate that our grant is through them, because that makes my job that much easier. So we'll move on. Here's the grant from Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. It's federal money, i.e. the grant must remain pure. Every student must be documented with intellectual disability. Money cannot be used to serve other groups. Now, if they have intellectual disability and they're also ASD, that's fine, but the intellectual disability is the prime thing, okay? So if we have an ASD student that would want to apply, but his IQ is 102, he can't come here, all right? He needs to go ahead and get involved in the adult welding program, okay? I will be around. Other people will be around to help him out if he needs a little extra help, but he would not qualify for my program because of that. We got a $300,000 grant. It was for a 3-year period. Kathy Lipo, the lady that I work with who wrote the grant, said it took her about 20 hours to tabulate the information from a wide variety of sources. I helped a little bit there, not a lot. All right, last line, great people. They want you to succeed. And that's really the best way I can sum it up. So we applied in June. We received it in September, this a couple of years ago, fast turnaround. They're willing to help or know who can help with just about anything related to your grant. Remember, students who enroll must be done with the K-12 system. No deferred diploma or any of that kind of stuff. They need to be done. So they'll either have a special diploma or a standard diploma, but they must be done with the K-12 system. So when you look at that, it's not a whole lot that has to be done if you are a person on another campus who might want to get one of these grants and start a program like mine. I've been very fortunate that everybody at Westside where I work has been on board with it. We've had 2 great vocational instructors who are more than willing to have my type of students in their curriculum, in their classrooms. And so all of that has gone really pretty smoothly. We have had a few little things that I can kind of foresee for the future. So I want to talk about those. So one of the difficulties we've seen was that obtaining students, even though I know many helpful people, has been tough. We've had many instances of ASD students being interested, but unless they had the intellectual disability classification, they're not eligible. And we talked about that previously. I would take them. That's true. We may have been overly ambitious in our goal for 6 students the first year. So we've had 4. All right. So one of the other things we see is very few CTE staff are trained in ESE teaching strategies. Nearly all of them came directly from the industry that they teach. As a result, I often coach those teachers in needed strategies to meet the needs of the students. And I shared that earlier. Sometimes I go do an observation for a few minutes and give them a few pointers, but that's part of my function on this campus, to be a team player and do what I need to do. So you may experience that a little bit too. It's not the end of the world. We give them a few strategies to help them deal with the situation and ultimately for the success. But we see that some formal training may be needed for those staff people. So something that we see as a possibility. So we see some possible future difficulties. It's anticipated that the program be expanded to cover most of the industry offerings that we have here on this campus, but that will require many staff members to participate in some ESE strategy training, and funds and trainers will be needed for that. Some staff have had students with disabilities enrolled in their programs in the past. Despite doing their best to accommodate those students, some were unsuccessful. The staff say they can't spend huge amounts of time to have students who don't complete the course working against the teacher's job placement record. That is true. And remember, it's set at 70%. So if there's 10 people in a class, it's expected that 7 of the 10 will be offered a job and that they will take that job. That's just CTE in the state of Florida. That's way bigger than me, okay? But with my guys being worked in there, there's the possibility that some of them may not be employed. We don't want that to happen. They're going to leave here with a credential, but there's always that possibility. So as far as spending the extra time needed, people like myself are needed on this campus and will be needed on your campus if you're thinking about starting up a program like this. So the old-timey ESE teachers, they're needed. That's the best way I can say that. Successes we've seen, both fields we offer, welding and electricity, the instructors have been hugely receptive. And I shared that with you earlier about both Vinny, the welding instructor, and Tina, the electricity teacher. Part of that comes from prior success they have had with students who are undisclosed. They don't tell us that they have a disability, but we kind of figure it out. And these are students who have completed the course and become employed in good paying jobs. Vinny shares a story about an ASD student he had 5 years ago. And as you know, being around ASD students, some of you have spent many, many hours with them. Oftentimes they have an intense level of concentration for very specific tasks. Well, the one that he tells this great story about is a guy that learned to TIG weld, that's welding aluminum sheet together. It's a very intricate process, requires a lot of concentration, but he learned to do that very well here. He works for Mitsubishi Electric in the industrial park down in South Orlando, and he makes $25 an hour. And he's had that job for 5 or 6 or 7 years. So can they do it? Sure. Will they all be able to do it? No, but there's other jobs available. So we're proud of students like that. And the best part about it is they come by every now and then, they just stop in for a visit. And we can share them with our present students. Hey, this guy was here 5 years ago. He's going to tell you what he's doing right now. It's a teachable moment. So we use those. My students have been immersed in the welding program. As I told you before, they all chose welding. None of them chose electricity for about 40 weeks now this year. The others here treat them like they're their little brothers. And that's something that we've really worked on, having a little bit of peer mentoring, peer tutoring. They're included at lunchtime, although that doesn't happen in a big way like it used to because of the COVID things. We don't have our lunchroom open yet. But many times they sit at the picnic tables out behind the school, and my guys are welcome to come down there and often do. And so that's something that helps them socialize, but it also gives them people here in this classroom that they know they can go to if they need a little help. They can always come to me, they can always come to Vinny, but sometimes they'd rather go to a peer, and that's great. So all of them have shown great concern for progress and safety. This has been a good deal in all aspects. We wanted to set up a program through VR, and VR had mentioned this to us, and we've been unsuccessful thus far. So I'd welcome any input from any of you that are watching this that have had success with that VR peer mentor program, where they pay the peer mentors $10 an hour to work with our students a certain number of hours per week. Like I said, we've tried really hard to make that work. It hasn't yet, but if you have some hints, some clues, some contacts that you could share with me, please do that, because we would like to put that in place in our operation. So,
Chris, we've got a couple of questions that came up in the chat box.
yes.
One of them asked, can students outside of Orange County participate in this program?
They absolutely may participate. Absolutely.
And also the other question, and I think you covered this, how many students are in your program each year?
Well, this administration here would like for me to have 8. I've got 4. I've had 1 go through. I've got 3 presently. Part of our thing is to find better ways to recruit. I alluded to that in an earlier slide. It's been tough, but I work directly with transition services here in Orange County. You guys know Cannon Cameron. He heads up that division. I worked for him for many years. And so they help send students here. Probably the biggest thing for many of the potential students is transportation. They're used to having a school bus, and now the school bus no longer exists. So that's been a big thing for many of the parents that I've talked to that I've interviewed with. It's an adult campus and they have to provide their own transportation here.
Okay, let me see if there's any other questions. Okay, one thing I do want to say to this session has been recorded and will be posted on the Florida DCDT website probably next week. Takes a while to get everything out there and put on the website, but check next week. You can download a copy of the PowerPoint and all of those kinds of things. The website is FloridaDCDT, all one word, .org. All right. Do we have any other questions? There's about 10 minutes left in the session. Were you finished? Oh, there's your information. Chris, I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to put that up. Yeah, I definitely wanted to put that up. And like I say, anybody that thinks they might want to do this, I'm happy to do that. But you have to remember also, if you contact the people at FCSUA, I know Drew's here because I can see him on my screen. But if you contact them, these other programs, there's a variety of them throughout the state of Florida. If you're, say, in the Western Panhandle, there's 4 or 5 of them up there. It may be easier for you to go to one of those that's near you, observe the program, see what's going on, but you can contact those people at FCSUA and they will give you guidance and direction as far as where they are and who to contact there if you want to see that in progress. Anybody's happy, anybody that wants to see my program, I'm happy to show them the program. Just let me know you're coming. We will walk around and you can watch the students at work. I will be happy to show you that. One other thing, guys, I hate saying this, but this is my last year. I retire this year. So if somebody's out there that's unemployed and thinks this might be a possible fit, my director would be happy to talk to you.
There's another question that came up, Chris. How do students typically do with the welding curriculum not being allowed to be modified?
They're fine with the welding curriculum not being modified simply because we do whatever it takes to make sure they get that skill. Okay, you got to remember the welding curriculum is a pretty big curriculum. They are only getting that first part of it that allows them to get the welder's help or credential. Okay,
and the rest, and the rest of the welding they would learn on the job. It's on the job training, right? They
would get that on the job, or if they wanted to come back as an adult student, they could do that. They just wouldn't have their FCSUA scholarship, which they have their first year with me. So they can get Pell Grants. They can get funding from VR. There's other ways for them to come back, and nobody's going to turn them away. We're happy to have them, but that would be how they would follow up with more education.
And Drew did post on the chat room. I don't know if everyone saw it, but if you want to find other locations around the state, go to their website. It's fcsua@ucf.edu. And I know they have a map on there locating all the other programs across the state of Florida.
Absolutely. So again, I can't say enough about FCSUA. Great people. If you're going to start one of these up, they want you to be successful.
Okay. All right, before everybody starts signing off, I just wanted to remind everyone that there's another concurrent session that will be starting at 9:30, and then at 10:30 is the closing keynote with the Bureau Chief, and hope everyone has a wonderful day. Are there any more questions? Doesn't look like it. Thank you very much, Chris. It was good seeing you again.
Good to see you too, and thank you everybody for watching online. I appreciate that.